close your eyes for a moment. Just close them. I want you to think about the last time you felt it, that pull, that nudge, that moment when something inside you, not your mind, not your logic, not your overthinking brain, but something deeper whispered to you, warned you, tried to stop you, and you ignored it. You pushed past it. You told yourself you were being paranoid or dramatic, or that you needed to just trust the process, trust the person, trust the situation. And then it happened. Whatever you were warned about, it happened. And you sat there in the wreckage of that moment and said, I knew it. I felt it. Why didn't I listen? That's why we're here today. I need you to understand something before we go any further. What I'm about to share with you today is not a self-help lecture. This is not a 10-step program. This is not me standing on this stage telling you how to hack your emotions or optimize your love life or build your dream relationship by following a formula. No. What I'm about to do is look you in the eyes. Spiritually, metaphysically, from the deepest place I know how to speak from, and tell you that God has been trying to reach you in the area of love, in the area of your heart. And too many of you have been letting those calls go to voicemail, the chosen ones. That's who I'm speaking to today. And before you disqualify yourself, before you say, that's not me, I'm not special, I'm not chosen, I want you to understand what that word really means. Being chosen doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you haven't made mistakes. It doesn't mean you haven't loved the wrong person, stayed too long, left too soon, or built walls so high that even the right person couldn't climb over them. Being chosen means you were set apart for a purpose that is bigger than your pain. It means your story isn't finished. It means the very fact that you're alive today, the very fact that you found your way to this moment, means there is still something God is trying to say to you. And what He's saying right now, in this season, is this: I'm giving you a love warning. Please don't ignore this. Let me tell you about a woman named Sandra. Sandra was 34 years old, brilliant, beautiful. She had this laugh that could light up a room, the kind of laugh that makes strangers smile without even knowing why. She had built a career from nothing, put herself through school, bought her first house at 31. By every external measurement, Sandra was doing everything right. But when it came to love, Sandra kept walking through the same door and finding the same empty room. She had been in 3 long-term relationships, and in every single one she told me the same thing. She said, I knew from early on that something was off. But I stayed because I loved him. I stayed because I didn't want to be alone. I stayed because I thought I could fix it, or change it, or love hard enough to make it what I needed it to be. And she did what so many of you have done. She silenced the warning. She turned down the volume on that internal alarm system and convinced herself that love meant enduring. That commitment meant ignoring red flags. That strength meant swallowing your discernment and smiling through the slow unraveling of your own peace. Sandra's 3rd relationship ended in a way that nearly broke her, not because the man was a monster, but because she had poured so much of herself, 7 years of herself, into something that God had been trying to redirect her away from since year 1. And when it finally fell apart, she didn't just lose a relationship. She lost her sense of self. She lost her confidence. She lost her ability to trust her own instincts because she had ignored them for so long that she didn't know where they were anymore. I'm talking to the Sandras in this room today, and I know there are many of you, because her story is not unusual. Her story is the story of millions of people who are sitting right now in relationships or in the aftermath of relationships, wondering why love keeps feeling like a battle they can't win. But here's what I want you to understand. The problem was never that Sandra didn't deserve love. The problem was never that she was broken or unworthy or damaged. The problem was that she had not yet learned how to receive a love warning. Because God doesn't just bless our desires. Sometimes, in His greatest mercy, He warns us away from them. Think about that for a second. Think about what it means that the God of the universe, the one who spoke galaxies into existence, the one who numbered the hairs on your head and knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb, that God would take the time to whisper into your spirit and say, wait, not this one, not this way, not right now. That is not punishment. That is protection. That is love at its most divine. That is a father who sees the end of the story from the beginning, watching his child run toward something that will cost them more than they know, and reaching out his hand and saying, I'm warning you because I love you. But we live in a culture that has confused warnings with weakness. We live in a world that tells you to follow your heart without ever teaching you how to guard it. Proverbs 423 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. The course of your life. Not just your love life. Not just your relationships. The course of everything. Because who you choose to love, who you choose to allow access to your heart, will shape the trajectory of your entire existence. And yet so many of us treat our hearts like open borders. We let everyone in. We mistake intensity for intimacy. We mistake chemistry for compatibility. We mistake someone's need for us with their readiness for us. And we pay for those confusions in years, in tears, in therapy bills and sleepless nights and a slow, grinding erosion of the joy that God intended for our lives. I want to talk to you today about 3 kinds of love warnings that God gives to the chosen ones. 3 specific ways that heaven tries to get your attention when it comes to love. And I want to be specific because I know that general motivation sounds good in the room, but doesn't always help you Monday morning when you're staring at your phone, trying to decide whether to text someone back. The first love warning is the warning of peace, or more specifically, the absence of it. There is a passage in Philippians 4:77 that speaks of a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that guards your heart and mind. And I want you to notice the language. It guards. It protects. Peace is not just a feeling. Peace is a spiritual defense mechanism that God gives to his chosen ones so they can navigate a world that is trying to confuse them. And when peace leaves a situation, that absence is a warning. Now, I need to be careful here because some people confuse anxiety with the absence of peace. Some people, particularly those who have experienced trauma, feel anxious about good things too. If someone has been hurt repeatedly, love itself can feel threatening. So I'm not saying that every nervous feeling is a divine warning. What I am talking about is something deeper than nerves. I'm talking about that place in your spirit where you know. Not in your head, not in your feelings, but in that deep, unshakable inner knowing, where something is wrong, where something doesn't align, where no matter how much you try to talk yourself into peace, it won't come, where you have prayed over the situation and the silence you receive is itself a kind of answer. I know a man, I'll call him Marcus. Marcus was engaged to a woman who, on paper, seemed perfect. She was kind to him. They were compatible on almost every level. His family loved her. She came from a strong background, shared his values, shared his faith. And Marcus told me, I wanted so badly to feel what I thought I should feel. But every time I was about to take the next step, something in me went quiet in a way that didn't feel like peace. It felt like a held breath, like the moment before something happens. Marcus almost walked down that aisle. He almost convinced himself that his unease was just cold feet, just the fear that any reasonable person feels when making a major commitment. And I want to say this very clearly. There is a difference between the fear of commitment and the warning of God. Cold feet feels like fear. A divine warning feels like clarity. Cold feet says, I'm scared to jump. A love warning says, this is not the right cliff. Marcus didn't walk down the aisle. It was one of the hardest decisions of his life. It hurt people he cared about. It cost him relationships and reputation. But he told me years later, sitting across from me with his wife and their 2 children, If I had ignored that warning, I would have ruined 2 lives trying to build one. I'm grateful I listened. Peace is a compass, and when God is giving you a love warning, the first thing he often does is remove your peace from a situation. Don't anesthetize yourself with business. Don't drink away the discomfort. Don't throw yourself into the relationship harder, trying to outrun the feeling. Be still enough to hear what your spirit is saying. The second love warning is the warning of fruit. Jesus said in Matthew 7:16, "By their fruit you will recognize them." This is one of the most practical, applicable pieces of wisdom in all of Scripture, and we almost never apply it to love. We apply it to pastors. We apply it to politicians. We apply it to people we're trying to decide whether to trust with our businesses or our secrets. But when it comes to the person we want to love, we somehow forget to look at the fruit. What does it mean to look at the fruit? It means you stop listening to what someone says about who they are and start watching what they consistently do over time. Because anyone can tell you they love you. Anyone can give you a speech about their intentions. Anyone can promise you the life you've always wanted in the early days when everything feels electric and new and magical. But fruit takes time to grow. Fruit is what appears when the seasons change, when the pressure comes, when the newness wears off, when you see how they handle disappointment, how they talk to people they have power over, how they treat people they have nothing to gain from. When you see how they respond when they're wrong, when they've hurt you, when you need something they're not in the mood to give. I think about a young man I'll call David. David was 27 and had fallen deeply in love with someone he described as the most captivating person he had ever met. Charismatic, funny, attentive in the early days, but David kept noticing things. Small things at first. The way she spoke about her exes, every single one of them a villain in her story, with never any accountability, never any reflection on what she might have contributed. The way she subtly put him down in front of others and then called it a joke. The way her kindness seemed to be conditional, there when she needed something from him, absent when she didn't. The way his friends pulled away, not dramatically, but slowly. The way people pull away when they sense something isn't right, but don't know how to say it. These were fruit. These were signs. And every time David tried to address them, the conversation was redirected. He was too sensitive. He was overthinking. He was the problem. And David, who loved this person, who wanted this to work, who had invested emotionally and financially, and had let himself believe this was his person, started second-guessing himself. He started reading books about how to be a better partner. He started going to therapy, not to heal himself, but to figure out how to stop triggering her. He bent himself into shapes he was never designed to take. 3 years later, David found himself sitting in my office looking like a man who had been at war. Not just tired, hollowed out, because when you stay in a relationship that God has been warning you about through the fruit, it doesn't just hurt you emotionally. It can restructure how you see yourself. It can make you believe that the version of you that someone else's dysfunction created is the real you. And it takes years to unlearn that. David had ignored the fruit, not because he was stupid, not because he didn't notice, but because he loved the person. Because hope is powerful. Because we are wired to want the fairy tale, and admitting that what we have is not the fairy tale feels like failure. But I want to say to you today, recognizing a warning is not failure. Heeding a warning is wisdom. Choosing your wholeness is not giving up on love. It is honoring the love that God has for you enough to believe that you deserve better. Look at the fruit. Not just once, but over time. Not under perfect conditions, but under stress. Not when they're trying to win you, but when they feel they already have you. The fruit tells the truth, even when everything else is lying. The third love warning, and this may be the most important one, is the warning of character transformation. And I say this one is the most important because it's the most subtle. It's the one we're least likely to recognize until we're already deep in it. This warning is when God shows you that a person's presence in your life is causing you to move away from the best version of yourself. When love is right, it should build you up. It should call out the greatness in you. It should make you more of who you were designed to be, not more dependent, not more insecure, not more isolated from the people who love you, not more tolerant of things that contradict your values. It should make you more. But sometimes we fall into love with someone whose gravitational pull is toward less peace, less faith, less connection to God, less connection to yourself, less integrity, less joy. And we do it so gradually that we don't notice until someone who loves us holds up a mirror and says, "I don't recognize you anymore." And that's a love warning. That is God speaking through the people around you, through the quiet conviction in your own spirit, through the distance you feel from everything that once felt sacred and true. Saying, the love you think you're gaining is costing you something you cannot afford to lose. It's costing you yourself. Now I want to talk to a different group of people in this room, because not everyone here is in a relationship they need to leave. Some of you are carrying love warnings of a different kind. God is warning you that you are not ready, that the walls you've built to protect yourself from being hurt again are the same walls keeping love out, that the pattern you keep repeating isn't just bad luck. It's a wound that hasn't been healed, a belief system about love that was shaped by pain rather than truth. And until you let God into that room, until you let healing come to those places, you will keep attracting the same lesson in different faces. There is a woman I want to tell you about. I'll call her Miriam. Miriam was 41 years old and had not been in a serious relationship for 7 years. She was successful, self-aware, funny, deeply spiritual. She had done a lot of work on herself. She had gone to therapy. She had read the books. She had attended the retreats. She knew her attachment style and her love language and her trauma responses. She could describe her own psychological landscape with the precision of a cartographer. But Miriam was lonely in a way that went beyond missing companionship. She was lonely in the way you can be lonely when you've been keeping yourself safe for so long that safety and isolation have started to feel like the same thing. And she came to me not because she was in a bad relationship, but because she was afraid of what she'd discovered, that she was terrified of a good one, because Miriam had watched love destroy the people she loved most. She had watched her mother broken by her father's absence. She had watched her sister pour herself out in a marriage that left her empty. She had decided at some point, consciously or not, that love wasn't safe. That loving deeply meant being hurt deeply. That the only way to protect herself was to stay in control, stay self-sufficient, stay behind the glass, and look at love from a distance, but never actually step into it. And God had been warning Miriam, not away from love, but toward healing, toward vulnerability, toward trusting that his love for her was sufficient to sustain her even in the risk of loving another person. The warning wasn't stay away. The warning was come closer. Let me heal this. Let me show you what love was supposed to be before it got tangled up with all that pain. If that's you today, if you've been mistaking self-protection for wisdom, if you've been using your discernment as a shield instead of a guide, if you've been keeping God's blessing at arm's length because you can't quite believe you deserve it, then I want to speak to you right now. You are not being cautious. You are being robbed, and the thief isn't the person who hurt you. The thief is the lie that says love is not safe for you, that you are the exception to God's best, that everyone else gets to experience deep, healing, beautiful, reciprocal love except you. You are not the exception. You are the reason God sent this message. Today, let me tell you about something I read once that I've never been able to shake. A researcher named John Gottman spent decades studying couples, and he and his team were able to predict with extraordinary accuracy whether a couple would stay together or divorce, based not primarily on how much they argued or how compatible their interests were, but on something far simpler. They looked at how partners responded to what Gottman called bids for connection. A bid for connection is any attempt, large or small, that one person makes to connect with another. It might be a casual comment about the weather. It might be a laugh they want to share. It might be a worry they're voicing, or a detail about their day, or a hand reaching out in the dark. What Gottman found was this: couples that stayed together, that thrived, that built lives of genuine intimacy and satisfaction. Those couples turned toward those bids for connection almost every time. And couples that fell apart, that drifted into resentment and loneliness, those couples turned away, not dramatically, not in big explosive rejections. They turned away in small moments, moment by moment, bid by bid, until the accumulation of small rejections became a wall neither person knew how to get over. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I believe that God makes bids for connection with us about our love lives too. He makes small moments of clarity, small nudges of wisdom, small whispers in the night when you can't sleep, small checks in your spirit when something isn't right, and the chosen ones who thrive in love are the ones who learn to turn toward those bids, to stop in the middle of their own emotional noise and say, "Wait, God is trying to tell me something. Let me be still enough to hear it." And the ones who suffer, not because they are bad people, not because they aren't loved by God, but because of a choice that can be changed starting today, are the ones who keep turning away, who keep drowning out the still small voice with distraction and desire and the desperate human need to not be alone. I want to spend a few minutes talking about what love is actually supposed to feel like, because I think one of the reasons so many of us ignore love warnings is that we've been so shaped by a distorted picture of love that we don't recognize the real thing when it comes, and we don't recognize a counterfeit either. We have been trained by movies and music and social media to believe that love is supposed to feel like being out of control, that passion is the same as love, that if it doesn't consume you, if it doesn't destabilize you, if you can still function and think clearly while you're in it, then maybe it isn't real love. We've romanticized chaos. We've called obsession devotion. We've called jealousy proof of caring. We've called emotional instability depth. And so when a healthy relationship comes along, one that's steady, one that feels safe, one where there isn't constant drama, one where someone is consistently kind and consistently present and consistently choosing you, some people feel like something is missing. They confuse peace for boredom. They mistake security for lack of passion. They start to think that if their nervous system isn't in a constant state of fight or flight, they must not really be in love. That is one of the enemy's greatest tricks. To make wholeness feel bland and chaos feel alive. To make you distrust the very things God is offering you and chase the things that will cost you everything. Real love, the love that God designed you for, is described in 1 Corinthians 13. And I want to walk through it slowly because we quote it at weddings and cross-stitch it onto pillows, but I don't think we've let it actually convict us. Love is patient. Not sometimes patient. Not patient when it's convenient or when it makes you look good. Patient. It endures delay without frustration. It can wait. If what you're in is making you feel constantly anxious, constantly on edge, constantly waiting to see which version of this person you're going to get today, that is not the patience that belongs to love. Love is kind, actively kind, not passive, not merely non-violent, but actively working toward the good of the other person. Love does not envy. It doesn't compete with you. It doesn't feel diminished by your success. It doesn't keep score. Love does not boast. It is not proud. It is not self-absorbed, always pulling the focus back to itself, always needing to be the center of the story. Love does not dishonor others. It does not humiliate you, not publicly, not privately, not even in the little ways that people convince themselves don't count. It is not self-seeking. Love is not primarily interested in what it gets. Love is not easily angered, not hair-trigger, not unpredictable, not making you walk on eggshells in your own relationship. Love keeps no record of wrongs. And then it says, this love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. When I read that list, it is both the most beautiful and the most challenging thing I've ever encountered. Because it describes not just what we should look for, but what we should become. Because love is not just what someone offers you. Love is what you cultivate inside yourself. And God's love warning to the chosen ones is not only about who you're choosing, it's about who you're becoming in the process of choosing. Are you becoming more patient, more kind, more secure, more like the person God designed you to be? Or are you becoming more anxious, more defensive, more isolated, more a shadow of yourself? That is a question worth sitting with. That is a love warning dressed in everyday clothing. I want to tell you about a man whose story changed how I think about all of this. His name was Joseph. You know him from Genesis. And I want to look at Joseph's love story, not with a person, but with purpose, because I think it contains a message that every chosen one in this room needs to hear. Joseph was a young man who had something extraordinary inside him. He had dreams, not just sleeping dreams, but the kind of God-given vision for a future that sets a person apart. And from the beginning, that gift made his life complicated. It made his brothers jealous. It made him a target. It led to betrayal and slavery and imprisonment. If you had watched Joseph's life from the outside, you would have said this person is cursed. Nothing is going right for him. Every time he gets close to something good, something bad happens. But what was actually happening was that God was warning Joseph away from the ordinary. God was protecting him from settling. Every time Joseph was in a place where he might have gotten comfortable, where he might have said, "This is good enough, this is where I'll stay," something shifted. The suffering wasn't punishment. The warning wasn't condemnation. It was preparation. It was God saying, "What I have for you is bigger than what you're reaching for right now, and I can't give it to you until you're ready to hold it." And the same is true for many of the chosen ones sitting in this room. That relationship that didn't work out wasn't a mistake. That heartbreak that shattered you wasn't God forgetting about you. That season of waiting, that season of questioning, that season of wondering if love will ever find you, that season is not abandonment. It is preparation. God is building in you the capacity to carry what He has been preparing for you. But you have to cooperate with the building. You have to be willing to do the work that the waiting is asking you to do. You have to go into those rooms inside yourself that you've been keeping locked. You have to have the honest conversations with yourself about the patterns you keep repeating, the defenses you keep hiding behind, the lies about love and about yourself that you've been carrying since childhood and calling truth. Because here's what I know, God will not put His best in a vessel that hasn't been prepared for it. Not because He is withholding from you, but because the vessel determines the outcome. You cannot put new wine in old wineskins, and if you haven't allowed the healing, the growth, the transformation that God has been calling you toward, then even if the right person came tomorrow, you wouldn't recognize them, or you would recognize them and be too afraid to step toward them. Or you would bring your unhealed wounds into the relationship and slowly recreate the same brokenness in a new setting. The love warning, chosen one, is this: the waiting has a purpose. The process has a purpose. Don't rush past the preparation trying to get to the promise. I want to address something that I know some of you have been carrying in silence. Some of you have been in a relationship for a long time. Maybe you're married. Maybe you've built a life together. Maybe there are children involved, and you've been feeling something you don't know how to name. Not a dramatic crisis, Not abuse, not betrayal necessarily, but a distance, a quiet loneliness in the middle of what should feel like love. A sense that you are two people sharing a space, but not really sharing a life, and you've been wondering if what you're feeling is a love warning, or if it's just the normal ebb and flow of a long relationship, or if you've just grown complacent and need to work harder. I want to be very careful here, because I am not standing on this stage telling people to leave their marriages or abandon their commitments every time things get hard. That would be irresponsible and deeply unfaithful to what I believe about covenant and commitment. Marriage is hard. Long love is hard. It requires choosing someone over and over again on days when choosing them is the last thing you feel like doing. It requires showing up when showing up feels like dragging yourself through mud. It requires not just love as a feeling, but love as a daily decision. But I also want to say this: there is a difference between the hardness of commitment and the emptiness of disconnection. There is a difference between two people who are struggling together and two people who have stopped trying entirely. There is a difference between a relationship that has gone through a hard season and a relationship that has been in a hard season for so long that the hard season has become the whole story. And if you are in a relationship where you have genuinely, prayerfully, honestly, consistently tried, where you have been to counseling, where you have had the hard conversations, where you have shown up and been vulnerable and done the work, and the distance remains, and the fruit doesn't change, and your peace doesn't come back, then I want to give you permission to ask the question. Not to answer it rashly, not to answer it alone, but to bring it before God with honesty and say, "What are you saying to me? What is this feeling? What are you trying to show me?" Because sometimes the love warning is not this person is wrong for you. Sometimes the love warning is you two have drifted and it's time to fight your way back to each other. And sometimes, heartbreakingly, it is I love you enough to tell you that staying is not healing either of you. I can't tell you which one applies to your situation. Only you and God can navigate that together. But I can tell you that ignoring the warning either way, either by refusing to fight for something worth fighting for, or by staying in something that has caused irreparable damage because leaving feels like giving up, either kind of ignoring is costly, and God is offering you the gift of clarity if you will be still enough to receive it. Let me talk for a moment about what happens when we do choose to listen to a love warning, because I want you to know that heeding a divine warning is not the end of the story. It is often the beginning of the best chapter. I told you about Sandra at the beginning. Sandra, who spent 7 years in a relationship she felt warned about from the beginning. I want to finish her story, because Sandra's story didn't end in that devastated apartment where she sat in the wreckage of everything she'd built and lost. Sandra made a decision after that. She decided that she was going to stop running from herself. She went back to her faith. She went deep into therapy. She spent a year asking herself the hard questions, not about the men who had hurt her, but about the choices she had made, the signs she had ignored, the version of herself that had kept saying yes when her spirit kept saying wait. And in that year, Sandra found something she had not expected to find in the ruins. She found herself, the version of herself that existed before the first heartbreak, before the first lesson she had to learn the hard way, before the world taught her to doubt what she knew. She found that young woman who used to trust her own instincts, who used to walk into a room like she deserved to be there, who believed she was worth the right kind of love. And from that place, not from desperation, not from loneliness, not from the fear of being alone, Sandra opened herself to something new. 3 years later, she called me. She was getting married to a man who, she said, was the quietest miracle she'd ever experienced. Not dramatic, not chaotic, not a roller coaster, just steady, just kind, just someone who saw her clearly and chose her anyway. And she said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, "I finally understand that the warning wasn't telling me I was unloved. The warning was telling me I deserved better than I was accepting. And I had to believe that before the better could come. Chosen one, the warning is not rejection. The warning is redirection. The warning is not God saying you are too broken for love. The warning is God saying I have something better than what you're settling for, and I need you to trust me enough to let go of the less so you can receive the more." Proverbs 3:5 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Not some of your heart, all of it, including the parts that want what they want, including the parts that are tired of waiting, including the parts that have been hurt so many times that trusting feels dangerous, including the parts that would rather have the wrong person right now than the right person in God's timing. All of your heart. That's what He's asking for, because the love He is preparing you for is worth the surrender. The peace He is preserving you for is worth the discomfort of the warning. Let me talk about timing for a moment, because I think one of the reasons the chosen ones struggle with love warnings is that they confuse God's timing with God's denial. You pray for love, and the answer is not yet, and you hear that as never. You wait, and you wait, and you watch everyone around you, apparently finding their person and building their lives, and you start to wonder if the invitation got lost in the mail, if God forgot to include you, if somehow your name slipped off the list. And into that vulnerable place of waiting, the enemy sends counterfeits. He sends someone who looks like the answer to your prayer, but who is actually a test of your discernment. He sends someone with the right packaging, but the wrong content. He sends someone at exactly the moment when you're tired of waiting, when your resistance is low, when your loneliness has become so acute that you would rather have the wrong love than no love, and you feel the warning. That check, that hesitation, that thing in your spirit that says wait, and you override it because the loneliness is louder than the wisdom. I want to say something to the waiters in this room, something I want you to carry with you long after today. Your waiting is not passive. Your waiting is not empty. If you are a chosen one who is in a season of waiting for love, that season is not a waiting room where nothing is happening. That season is a training ground. That season is God working on you and in you and through you, building the very things that will make you ready for what's coming. Building patience, building security, building identity that is not dependent on whether someone loves you back. Building faith that does not flinch in the face of an unanswered prayer. The tree that withstands the storm is not the one that was never tested by wind. It's the one whose roots went deep in the quiet seasons. Your waiting is going deep. Your roots are growing, and when love comes, real love, love designed by God for you specifically, you will be able to hold it. Because you went deep in the waiting. I want to close by coming back to you, to the specific you, sitting right where you are, with the specific story that only you know in full. The relationship you're in that something in you knows isn't right. The person you've been missing that God keeps reminding you was a lesson, not a destination. The wall around your heart that you know needs to come down, but feels too risky to remove. The pattern you keep repeating because it's familiar even though it hurts. The prayer you've been praying for years that seems to have gone unanswered. God sees all of it. Every sleepless night, every deleted text, every prayer whispered in a dark car parked outside a house you drove to just to feel close to someone who isn't right for you. Every tear cried over someone who wasn't crying over you. Every time you minimized what you needed because you were afraid that needing too much would make you unlovable. Every version of yourself you abandoned in the hope that this time, if you were different enough, someone would finally stay. God sees it, and He is not standing at a distance watching with detached interest. He is a Father who grieves with you, who mourns every love warning you didn't hear because the pain was too loud, who celebrates every moment you choose yourself, choose healing, choose the harder wisdom over the easier distraction, who has been composing your love story from before the foundations of the world, not a story of endless heartbreak and missed connection, but a story of redemption, of becoming, of a love that comes to a you who has been made ready to receive it. The warning is an act of love. Every time God nudged you and said, "Not this, not yet," it was love. Every closed door that felt like rejection was protection. Every prayer that seemed unanswered was actually answered with something better than what you asked for. Something you couldn't see yet because you were too focused on what you wanted to see what God was offering. And now, in this moment, He is giving you one more warning. The warning is this: don't leave this room and go back to sleep. Don't take this moment of clarity and let it be absorbed back into the noise of your life without letting it change something. Don't hear these words and feel them and let them move through you, and then go back to the same choices, the same patterns, the same voice, mailed conversations with heaven. This is your warning. This is your moment. This is God saying to you, His chosen one, His set apart, His precious, His beloved, the one He knew before you were born and has been working on and through and for your whole life. God is saying, I love you too much to watch you settle. I love you too much to stay quiet while you walk towards something that will cost you your peace, your identity, your best self. I love you too much to let you confuse counterfeit for covenant. I love you too much to stop warning you even when you don't listen. But I also love you too much to force you. The warning is a gift, but the response is yours. The door is open, but the choice to walk through it is yours. The healing is available, but the willingness to receive it is yours. The love that God has prepared for you is real, but the faith to trust that you deserve it, that is yours to choose. And today, right now, I am asking you to choose it. I am asking you to say yes to the warning, to turn toward the still, small voice instead of away from it, to stop settling for the noise and start listening for the peace, to look at the fruit instead of just the flower, to become the kind of person who is ready for the love you've been praying for, not just the kind of person who is still waiting. Because here's the truth I want to leave you with. The love that God has for you is not hypothetical. It is not conditional on your being perfect. It is not waiting for you to be completely healed, completely whole, completely figured out. He loves you right now, in this exact moment, in this exact mess, with these exact scars and walls and unanswered questions. His love for you is the most real thing in the room right now. And from that love, that perfect, complete, unconditional love, all other love flows. When you know you are loved by God, you don't have to accept a counterfeit. When you know you are chosen by God, you don't have to beg to be chosen by someone else. When you know that the God of the universe calls you His beloved, you start to recognize when someone else's treatment of you falls short of what you were designed for. That is the foundation. That is where the love warning begins and ends. It begins with God saying, I love you, and it ends with God saying, because I love you, I'm not going to stay quiet while you settle for less than that love reflected back at you by another human being. Chosen one, the warning has been given. The question is now yours. What will you do with it? I believe that today is a turning point for someone in this room. That something shifted in you during this time together. That a door you'd been keeping closed has been nudged open. That a voice you'd been drowning out has gotten a little louder. That a decision you've been avoiding has gotten a little clearer. Don't ignore that. That is not coincidence. That is not emotion. That is the fingerprint of a God who has been pursuing you, who has been speaking to you, who has been warning you and loving you and waiting for this moment when you would finally be still enough to hear Him say, I have something better. Trust me. Let go. Come home. Go and be loved. Go and be whole. Go and be the chosen one that heaven says you already are. The warning has been given. The love is waiting. All that's left is your yes. Sonnet 4.6